Here in Qumran, some 20 kilometers east of Jerusalem, a shepherd left his flock of sheep and goats to search for a stray. Amid the crumbling limestone cliffs that line the northwestern rim of the Dead Sea, he spied a cave in the crevice of a steep rocky hillside. Intrigued, he cast a stone into the dark interior, only to be startled by the sound of breaking pots. This sound echoed around the world. The stone did not break only jars, but the silence of 2,000 years of suppressed history. The Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered during the mid-1990s in the caves of Qumran. Cave number 4 was the motherlode of manuscripts. It contained some 575 manuscripts, among which were Aramaic fragments of the Book of Enoch, later published by Yusef Milik in 1976 CE. The Book of Enoch is ascribed by tradition to Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah. It was considered canonical by some church fathers, such as Clement of Alexandria and Tertullian. It is still held canonical by some Ethiopian and Eritrean Orthodox churches and is extant in its entirety only in Ge'ez, the ancient language of Ethiopia. Its original language was in all likelihood Aramaic or Hebrew. The Book of Enoch is quoted as genuine production in the Epistle of Jude in the New Testament. The Encyclopedia Biblica proposes that all the writers of the New Testament were familiar with it and were more or less influenced by it in thought and diction. One of the largest and best preserved of the extant fragments of the Aramaic Enoch is the one containing the famous Apocalypse of Weeks. On the dating of this apocalypse, Hanan Eshel, former professor of the Dead Sea Scrolls at Bar Ilan University in Tel Aviv, reports the consensus of scholars that the Apocalypse of Weeks is the oldest extant Jewish historical apocalypse, and that it should be dated to the middle of the 2nd century BCE. So regardless of who the author was, we have before us an important historical document that was written more than 700 years before the advent of Islam. The Apocalypse of Weeks is a prophecy that succinctly records the history of the world. It divides it into specific units of time called weeks. Each week contains a description of one or more events. Roger Beckwith, in his book Calendar and Chronology, asserts that these weeks are not of indefinite or arbitrary length. Certainly, they are not weeks of years, for that would be too short. Therefore, Beckwith suggests that they are weeks of centuries, which is the reckoning method applied by Ethiopic Christian monks according to Milik. Richard Lawrence comments on the first week of the apocalypse. In the mode of reckoning here adopted, it is evident that a day stands for 100 years, so that consequently, a week is made to express a period of 700 years. And this is the reckoning method we will use here. We have dated the creation of Adam at 4000 BCE, following the prevailing opinion among scholars who regard the Masoretic text of the Hebrew Bible as their authority. This line shows the sequence of events starting from the creation of Adam to the end of the 7th week, while this one shows the corresponding Gregorian dates. So what history does this ancient apocalypse narrate? Enoch promises at the outset of the prophecy to tell us something about the elect of the world and the plant of uprightness, who shall appear towards the end of times. Who are they? When will they arise? And what will make them different? Before Enoch answers those questions, he gives us a brief account of the major historical events that precede their coming. Enoch says, "I was born the 7th in the 1st week." Enoch was the 7th among 10 fathers from Adam to Noah. He was also born 622 years after the creation of Adam, and this places him on the 7th day of the 1st week. "In the 2nd week there will be great wickedness. And in it there shall be the first end, and in it a man shall be saved." Commentators such as John Collins, Robert Charles, and Roger Beckwith agree that the first end is the flood, and that the man who shall be saved is Noah. And after that, in the third week, at its close, a man shall be elected as the plant of righteous judgment, and his posterity shall become the plant of righteousness forevermore. Robert Charles identifies the man and the plant of righteousness with Abraham and his seed, chosen as the race in and through which God would reveal his righteous judgments. This agrees with the Quran, which states, "Indeed, we sent Noah and Abraham, and placed in their offspring prophethood and scripture." Abraham lived at the beginning of the second millennium BCE, according to most biblical sources, and this places him precisely at the end of the third week, as the Apocalypse asserts. In the fourth week, at its close, visions of the holy and righteous shall be seen, and a law for all generations and an enclosure shall be made for them. The fourth week ends at 1200 BCE. Charles explains the visions as the divine manifestations in favor of Israel in Egypt, and the law as the Torah given on Sinai, which is clearly what the passage refers to. But did Moses really live at the end of the fourth week as the Apocalypse stipulates? There are two opinions of biblical scholars based on their difference over the date of the Exodus. The traditional opinion is that the Exodus from Egypt took place in the mid-15th century BCE. This opinion is judged by the Anchor Bible Dictionary as too simple solution, which is ruled out by the combined weight of all other biblical data, plus additional information from external data. According to the Encyclopedia Judaica, most scholars agree that the 15th century BCE is too early for the Exodus and does not conform with other data about Israelite, Canaanite, and Egyptian history. The other opinion, which is the opinion of the majority, is that the Exodus took place in the mid-13th century BCE. The Encyclopedia Judaica states that the conclusions of archaeological research on the date of the Israelite conquest support the theory that the Exodus took place in the first half of the 13th century. This necessarily implies that Moses lived in the mid-13th century, a date that agrees with the Apocalypse. Then, in the fifth week, at its end, the house of glory and the kingdom will be built forever. This is the building of the Second Temple in about 520 BCE by the returnees from the Babylonian captivity. It is quite revealing how the first 5 weeks have been explained with no difficulty by simply applying the reckoning method suggested by Roger Beckwith and Richard Lawrence. All events have fallen into their proper places on the timeline, even conforming with the latest findings in the field of biblical archaeology. Why scholars have not been consistent in applying the same method to read the whole apocalypse is difficult to explain. Will the events of the 6th and 7th weeks provide the answer to the evaded question? The 6th week extends from 500 BCE to 200 CE. It describes events in it and events in its end. Among the events that shall take place in the week is that all who live in it shall be blinded, and the hearts of all of them shall godlessly forsake wisdom. Upon returning from the Babylonian exile, many Jews relapsed into sun worship. The Anchor Bible Dictionary asserts that, after the exile, sun worship remained one of the pagan cults most popular among Palestinian Jews, as extra-biblical sources attest. The New Testament speaks of a certain Jewish group known as the Pharisees, which some researchers trace back to a post-exilic Farsi or Persian priesthood. This brood of vipers, as Jesus labeled them, opposed him and his message and eventually conspired with the Roman authorities to have him killed. And here comes the surprise. In the 6th week, a man shall ascend. What the Quran has affirmed of the Messiah is confirmed by Enoch's Apocalypse. Jesus was neither God nor the Son of God, but a man, sent by God. He was neither killed nor crucified, but saved and raised. These are two central doctrines over which Christians differ with Muslims. And here is Enoch bearing witness to the veracity of the Muslim position. Then, at the end of the 6th week, the house of dominion shall be burnt with fire, and the whole race of the chosen root shall be dispersed. When the Jews revolted against the Roman rule between the years 66 and 136 CE for various reasons, the temple was burned and destroyed by the Romans. Many people were killed and many were expelled. This exerted a decisive influence upon the dispersion of the Jewish people throughout the world, as the center of worship shifted from the temple to rabbinic authority. After the Romans had conquered Palestine, made the Israelites subjects of their dominion, and imposed paganism, the true religion that Jesus had taught began to fade off, and a new godless generation arose. Enoch says, "In the 7th week shall an apostate generation arise, and many shall be its deeds, and its deeds shall be apostate." Then, while the world was groping in the darkness of polytheism and iniquity, ignorance and immorality, a dazzling light shone forth from the mountains of Mecca to illuminate the corners of the earth. Behold, the righteous elect were chosen at the end of the 7th week, and at its close shall be elected the elect righteous of the eternal plant of righteousness, to receive sevenfold instruction concerning all his creation. No historian would dispute that Islam was the greatest event that happened during the 7th to 9th century CE, and no prophet descended from Abraham arose within that time other than Muhammad. God chose him on the 7th week to be the prophet of the chosen righteous. John Collins comments, "In the Enochic apocalypse of weeks, the turning point comes with the election of the chosen righteous in the 7th week, which follows directly on the destruction of the temple. This week is inhabited by an apostate generation. The second temple is not even acknowledged here, and it seems safe to infer that the chosen righteous were alienated from it." Yes, prophethood is handed over to the descendants of Abraham through the line of his son Ishmael. The elect righteous are diverted from Jerusalem by divine decree. "We have seen you, O Muhammad, turning your face about in the heaven. Now we will surely turn you to a prayer direction that shall please you. So turn your face towards the sacred mosque, and wherever you are, turn your faces towards it. Those who have been given the scripture know that this is the truth from their Lord. They shall receive sevenfold instruction concerning all his creation. God shall grant them knowledge through the Quran and wisdom through his prophets' words. In the Aramaic version, they shall be given sevenfold wisdom and knowledge." Collins admits, in short, they enjoy special revelation. The emergence of the chosen righteous is in itself a climax of history. Moreover, they shall be witnesses over the nations that preceded them, as God says in the special revelation, "He has chosen you, and has not laid upon you any hardship in religion. It is the religion of your father Abraham. It is God who named you Muslims before in former scriptures and in this revelation, that the messenger may be a witness over you, and you may be witnesses over mankind." And according to a prophetic hadith, Noah will be asked on the day of judgment, "Did you convey the message?" He will say yes. His nation will then be asked, "Did Noah convey the message to you?" They will say, "No warner ever came to us." Then God will say to Noah, "Who will bear witness in your favor?" He will say, "Muhammad and his followers." This explains the additional phrase in the Aramaic version of the Apocalypse that describes the chosen righteous as witnesses to righteousness. The appellation, the chosen righteous, does not refer to one man as in the 3rd week, but a whole community of believers. They are the first 3 favored generations of Islam, about whom the prophet said, "The best of my people is my generation, then those who come after them, then those who come after them." Yes, they emerged at the close of the 7th week, but God promised Abraham, "Their plant of righteousness shall live forever."